These are the top wealth building strategies by income level. Hey everyone, if you're new here, my name is Mitchell, and today we'll talk about the best financial strategies to deploy across 3 different income levels: $40,000 a year, $80,000 a year, and $150,000 plus a year. I think breaking it down this way is necessary since the financial resources and short-term goals of somebody at a low income level can be quite different than what people who are making 6 figures plus should be looking to do. So let's jump right in, starting with those who fall within the $40,000 a year bracket. This is a very common income level to be at here in the United States, and probably higher than you would guess. In fact, about 25% of households in the US make $40,000 a year or less. The thing with making $40,000 a year is that you can make it work, as there are plenty of people out there who are, but it just takes a lot more attention to detail. Depending on where you live, a gross income of $40,000 a year works out to a net income of roughly $2,700 a month. With all of life's necessities, from housing to groceries to insurance and healthcare, there isn't a whole ton of leftover money, so clearly at this monthly income, the dollars and the cents are going to matter more than at higher levels of income. That's why you'll often hear people in the personal finance space talking about cutting out expenses like $5 coffees, because when you don't have much disposable income, you have to be smart about the ways you're using it. With that being said, let's talk strategies. The first strategic tip I have in this category is to build an emergency fund. In short, an emergency fund is money we put away that we do not touch at all unless it's an actual emergency. I've talked about this concept in depth with target amounts and things of that nature in a recent video that I will link, but as a quick summary, having an emergency fund is important because it serves as our financial foundation. I would do this before anything else because you never know when you will need it. I would do this with some quickness and be putting any disposable income into this fund as soon as possible if you don't have one already. The second strategy to deploy at this income level is to try to eliminate high interest rate debt. Higher interest rate debt can weigh down heavily on you and take away a good portion of your monthly income if you have to make monthly payments on credit card debt, high car loans, etc. After setting up an emergency fund, this would be my second priority. The reason being that the longer you take to pay off your debt, the more interest you pay, which is money going towards nothing. Make sure to make your minimum monthly payments on all of your debt, but I would also start putting any leftover money towards paying down the balance on your debt. I personally would choose to pay down the one with the highest interest rate, since mathematically that would save you the most money. But if it helps you to build motivation, you can start with the smallest debt balance you have and pay that balance off first. The key here is that whichever method we choose, we are starting to pay off the debt now. Now, if you have an emergency fund and have no high interest rate debt, tip number 3 is to start looking to invest in your retirement accounts, i.e. your 401k or your Roth IRA. At this income, it's unlikely that you can max out either, simply because there's not enough disposable income left over, but if possible, it would be great to contribute at least a little bit into your 401k and get your employer match if they offer one. If you're not sure what an employer match is, pretty much for every dollar you contribute into your 401k, your employer will also put in another dollar up to a certain percent of your salary. This is great because to us, it's pretty much just free money. If your employer doesn't offer a match, I think any contribution to a Roth IRA or a 401k would be great. If you want more details about either of these accounts, check out this video up here. Now, let's move on to people making $80,000 a year. $80,000 a year is roughly the median household income in the United States. If you're making $80,000 a year gross, after taxes, you're looking at taking home $58,000 a year, or roughly $4,800 a month. This obviously gives you more wiggle room, and here's the best ways to use the money at this level. First, we should get you budgeting your monthly income and expenses. I think budgeting is a great exercise because it forces you to face your spending habits and really analyze if the stuff you're spending your money on is worth it or not. I would take some time to sit down with your bank statements and credit card bills and figure out how much you roughly spend across various categories each month. Then, try to think about which of those categories you can try to cut back in so that you can have more money to work towards your financial goals and the things that actually matter to you. You don't need to cut out everything that is fun, but try to cut out things that don't actually bring you happiness and fulfillment. Now that we've talked about budgeting, our next financial goal at this income level is to save 20% of your monthly income. This falls in line with a concept I've talked about before, which is the 50-30-20 rule, which is a financial framework that many people use that pretty much allocates 50% of your spending going towards your needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% towards your savings/investments. If you have no high interest rate debt, like we touched on earlier, you should be enjoying your extra income and spending some money on your wants, but also contributing towards your future. This 20% put towards savings can be split between your investment accounts and your savings accounts. It's really up to you, but I personally would put at least a good chunk of it towards increasing your investments so that you can start taking advantage of compound interest. Compound interest will likely be the greatest contributor to your overall wealth over the course of your life if you start investing early and often. The third tip at this income level is to track your savings against a standard. See, Fidelity has this great infographic that shows savings targets by age to help you with knowing how much you need to save to retire comfortably. As you can see, it says at 30 years old, you should have 1 times your salary saved, at 40, 3 times your salary saved, and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, these metrics are just a suggestion, but it can be healthy to see so that you can make the decisions that best help your financial future. If you find that perhaps you're falling behind where you want to be, you can start contributing more of your extra income to your savings/investments, which is a decision you may not have made if you weren't tracking this metric. Now, moving on to our $150,000 a year income level. A $150,000 income has an after-tax net pay of roughly $98,000, which breaks down to a little more than $8,000 a month. Now, hopefully we're getting to the point where you have the means to live a little more freely. However, that's not to say you can just go spending on anything and everything, because a $150,000 salary can still be burned pretty fast if you're not careful. And that leads us right into the first strategy for this bracket, which is to avoid lifestyle inflation. This is a concept that as your income increases, you start spending more recklessly just because you can. I think there's a healthy balance of allowing yourself to enjoy your increases in income by buying the things you want, but also remaining diligent and using the money wisely to provide more financial freedom for yourself. You don't want to be going out and getting a brand new luxury car with a massive monthly payment just because there's extra money laying around. If you do this, you will create a scenario where you're a slave to this massive monthly payment and it will hang over your head and cause financial distress. The general advice here is to not get carried away and live life with a similar financial framework as you would at a lower income, such as sticking to the 50-30-20 rule that I mentioned earlier. Now, the second tip if you're making $150,000 a year is to start planning for the long term. If you are already maxing out your retirement accounts and have your financial situation on cruise control, there are tons of other long-term things you can start putting your money towards. Maybe you want to start saving for your kids' college, or maybe you want to pay for your kids' wedding down the line. These are massive expenses that are only rising in cost, so if you can start saving for them now with your extra income, it can be a great idea. Whatever it is, I just want you to be looking out on the horizon to prepare for the things you want to. And this leads us into the third piece of advice for people at this income level, and that is to be generous. I think regardless of your background, we can all agree that we can all use a little more generosity, both pouring out of us and hopefully pouring into us too. If you've been blessed to have a strong financial situation, it is great to give towards the causes that matter to you. Maybe it's donating to a local church or a charity you really admire. Or maybe just blessing people in your life. Whatever it is, I think the more money you have at your disposal, the more you are able to be generous with your money and really impact people's lives around you. With that, thank you very much for watching. And if you enjoyed watching this video, YouTube thinks you might like this video too, so check that out if you want. See you in the next video.